In the late summer of 1619, a storm-battered English privateer named the White Lion approached the shores of Virginia. On board were more than 20 African men and women, captives taken from a Portuguese slave ship. When they were traded for food and supplies at Point Comfort, their arrival marked the beginning of a centuries-long institution that would shape American history: slavery. To understand the significance of 1619, we must first look at the world in that era. The 17th century was a time of rapid European expansion. The Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, and English were carving out empires fueled by the profits of colonization. The transatlantic slave trade was already in full swing, with millions of Africans being forcibly taken from their homelands. West Africa had long established kingdoms and trade networks. However, European demand for labor in the New World led to an increase in the slave trade. African leaders and traders seeking European goods like guns and textiles participated in capturing and selling war prisoners and rival tribespeople into bondage. In 1619, the Portuguese ship São João Bautista was transporting enslaved Africans from Luanda, Angola, to New Spain, modern-day Mexico. However, during its journey, it was attacked by two English privateers, the White Lion and the Treasurer. These English ships, operating under Dutch authorization, captured a portion of the ship's human cargo. The White Lion, commanded by Captain John Jope, arrived at Point Comfort in August 1619. The ship's crew traded over 20 Africans to the English settlers in exchange for food and supplies. These Africans were not brought under a formal system of chattel slavery as it later developed. Instead, they were treated similarly to indentured servants who worked for a set period before gaining freedom. However, this was only a temporary condition. Over time, racial slavery became institutionalized in the colonies. Virginia in 1619 was still a struggling English colony. Established in 1607, it had endured years of famine, disease, and conflict with indigenous peoples. The colony's survival depended on tobacco, which had become its primary cash crop. At this time, labor was in high demand. Most of Virginia's workforce consisted of indentured servants, poor Europeans who agreed to work for a set number of years in exchange for passage to the New World. However, as the demand for labor increased, the English began turning to enslaved Africans. The status of Africans in early Virginia was uncertain. Some gained freedom and even owned land. However, in 1640, a critical event occurred. A man named John Punch, an African indentured servant, attempted to escape. While his white co-conspirators received extended contracts, Punch was sentenced to lifelong servitude, one of the first clear legal distinctions between African and European laborers. Over the next few decades, Virginia passed laws solidifying racial slavery. 1662, children of enslaved mothers were automatically enslaved. 1667, baptism no longer granted freedom to enslaved people. 1705, Virginia legally codified slavery, making enslaved Africans property for life. The arrival of the first Africans in Virginia was just the beginning. Over the next 250 years, millions of Africans would be forcibly brought to America. Slavery became the foundation of the Southern economy, shaping the nation's political and social landscape. The legacy of 1619 remains deeply woven into American history. From the abolitionist movement to the fight for civil rights, the struggle for justice and equality continues.